If we may begin by reciting Surah Al-Fatiha in honor of Sayyidah Hamida, daughter of Muslim bin Aqil. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء، حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا، أبي القاسم محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة، يا غريب الغرباء، يا مظلوم كربلاء، السلام على من جعل الله الشفاء في تربته، السلام على من الإجابة تحت كبته، السلام على ساكن كربلاء، فيا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي، يا سادتي، فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، إن الدين عند الله الإسلام، صدق الله وآمنا به. زينوا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. As we commemorate the martyrdom of Sayyid al-Shuhada, there are two aspects of his revolution that need to be maintained and preserved and passed on from generation to generation without any compromise. Yani maximum effort to be exerted on these two aspects of the revolution of Sayyid al-Shuhada. The first aspect of his revolution is what is contained within the tears, or ibra as they say, and then the abra. So you have the tears of Karbala and you have the lessons from Karbala. Under the tears of Karbala, we have everything within our practices through which the legacy of Sayyid al-Shuhada is commemorated and remembered. From remembering the gruesome details and the atrocities in which he was martyred, the crying, the majalis, the matam, the latam, the recitation of marthiyah and the nawha, all of these in terms of commemoration of the legacy of Sayyid al-Shuhada on one part. And on another part, equally important, and the relationship between these two is that both of them are of equal importance in regards to preserving the revolution of Sayyid al-Shuhada. The second aspect being understanding and then implementing the values and the principles for which Sayyid al-Shuhada stood up in a revolution in the first place. For these two aspects of the revolution are of utmost importance and stand side by side. In order for us to implement the values and the lessons, the principles for which Sayyid al-Shuhada stood up, we need to first of all contemplate over the underlining thesis, or you can say mission statement behind the revolution of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Imam says, notice his words when he was leaving Medina. And a lot of the citizens of Medina and later on the citizens of Mecca tried to speak to the Imam and try and change his mind over moving forward with this revolution, succumbing to the bay'ah of Yazid al-La'in. Yet you see that when Sayyid al-Shuhada was leaving Medina, he uttered a statement, or he made a statement that shows his underlying mission behind this revolution. He says, as he was leaving Medina, إِنِّي لَمْ أَخْرُجْ شَرًّا وَلَا بَطْرًا وَلَا ظَالِمًا وَلَا مُفْسِدًا وَإِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. The Imam says, I'm not coming out sharran in terms of malice. And this sentence or this word in itself has an entire explanation and possibly a series of majalis, because a number of historians and probably journalists who record history narrate the event of Karbala as being an epic where two political rivals faced each other. Taban, this is absolutely incorrect. In fact, it is a distortion of history, because when you use the word rival as per the understanding within the English language, you would mean that you have two equals, two people who are equal in capacity, in capability, in virtues, competing for a single post. Whereas this notion is out the window. Aslan, there is no comparison between Sayyid al-Shuhada and Yazid. Imam says, I did not come out of malice, neither did I come out dhaliman, he says. وَلَمْ أَخْرُجْ بَطْرًا وَلَا ظَالِمًا. Dhaliman over here meaning coming or derived from the word dhulm. And dhulm in opposition to nur, because darkness is an expression used to express ignorance, whereas nur is the term for light used to denote guidance. For Sayyid al-Shuhada makes it very clear when he says, وَمَا خَرَجْتُ ظَالِمًا or لَمْ أَخْرُجْ ظَالِمًا. The understanding is that the Imam is saying, I'm not coming out of ignorance. Rather, my path is a path dictated by nur, hidayah and guidance. He says, وَإِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي. He says, indeed, إِنَّمَا أَدَوَاتِ الْحَصْرِ, the way they say, particle of restriction. So when the word إِنَّمَا is used, the following sentence or the following words that are used after this denote exclusivity. Exclusive mission, sole intention and driving force behind the movement of Karbala is what? لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي. To implement or to seek reforms within the ummah of my grandfather. We have used the word islah or translated it as reform. To understand this word accurately, and when we refer back to the Arabic lexicons, you will see that under islah, the definition that is given, for example, in Lisanul Arab, is izalatul fasad, which means to remove or to abolish any sort of corruption or malpractice. Tayyib. So from here we come to understand that the reason for the stance which Sayyid al-Shuhada took was to abolish corruption that had become widespread within the ummah of Rasulullah. Reformation entails taking or returning a practice which has been corrupted either through its understanding or through its implementation back to its original and pure form. For Sayyid al-Shuhada, when he stood up to reject corruption that had taken place within the political realm of Islam. He stood up against corruption that had overtaken the social structure within Islam. He stood up to reject the corruption that had crept into the fiber of spirituality within the Muslims. Spirituality, when we say spirituality, yani furu' ad-din, even the way these people, even the way the Muslim Ummah carried out their furu' ad-din was a corrupt version of the furu' ad-din when we compare it to the furu' ad-din that Rasulullah came out with. The reasons for them to perform this furu' ad-din were corrupt as per the understanding of Rasulullah. And one explicit example of this statement is the day of Ashura. Only on the day of Ashura, as the sun began to rise or dawn began to break over the skies, you had two camps that recited Salatul Fajr. You had the camp of Sayyid al-Shuhada and you had the camp of Umar ibn Sa'ad al-La'in. Adole 30,000 people stood up and recited Salatul Fajr. And over here you have 72 companions who also stood up and recited Salatul Fajr. The camp of Sayyid al-Shuhada, their Fajr, in terms of its outward appearance, was not different than the Fajr of the people of Umar ibn Sa'ad. In the sense that over here there was recitation of Surah Al-Hamd and another surah, there was Qiyam, there was Ruku', there was Sujood. Even in the other place where they recited Fajr, they had Qiyam, they had Ruku', they had Sujood. But despite this apparent similarity, what was the difference between the Salah of Sayyid al-Shuhada and the Salah of these people? The philosophy or the reason behind the symbolism of furu' ad-din in itself had been corrupted. For when Sayyid al-Shuhada stood up for reformation or to reform the Muslim Ummah, he stood up to reform the Ummah in every domain of life. And if the underlying force or underlying motive behind the revolution of Sayyid al-Shuhada was reformation, then it becomes incumbent upon every Shia, rather every Muslim, to embark upon the principles of reformation in his life. Mu'min, Shia, Muslim should always seek to reform himself. Should always seek to reform the environment around him. Because the underlying statement of Sayyid al-Shuhada was reformation. For ihna, when we want to walk in the seerah of Sayyid al-Shuhada, when we want to implement the thoughts of Sayyid al-Shuhada in our lives, we need to start with the underlying principle of reformation. To reform or to bring about or implement reformation has multiple levels. You have reformation at a personal level, and then you have reformation at a social level that begins with the family, and then is extended out to the community which we interact with within the same madhab. And then reformation of the community within the school of Islam, which is outside the madhab. Yani you have reformation intra, yani within the madhab, and inter within the madhab. And then this reformation is extended out to all the monotheistic religions. And then after that, the circle is made wider and wider to encompass the entire of humanity. And then you have reformation on one hand, which deals with the reformation of the image of Islam. So you have reformation, or this concept of implementing reformation at multiple levels. Where does a person start and how does a person implement these? Tonight's lecture, inshallah, we look at one aspect of reformation, or self-betterment, or self-building. And this starts from the character. A person, how does he reform himself? And at what level does he start? When a person seeks to reform himself, there are three aspects of his character or of his being that need to be improved. One part of a person's character deals with adab and akhlaq, reformation within the field of adab and akhlaq. Number two, reformation of a person's spirituality, conducting and compliance of usuluddin, or furu'uddin, sorry. And number three, reformation in terms of understanding his belief system. Those aspects of his religion that identify his faith. How well does he know them? Three aspects of reformation: adab and akhlaq, furu'uddin, usuluddin. And when a person seeks or strives to change himself in these three domains, each one of these three are important, and not necessarily in terms of a vertical structure, in terms of importance, where a person prioritizes, where he says, no, my akhlaq is more important than my usuluddin, or usuluddin is more important than akhlaq, or furu'uddin is more important than usuluddin. But this one is ghalat, this one is absolutely wrong. When a person comes and tells you that furu'uddin is more important than usuluddin, there is a fallacy in his argument, because furu'uddin, actions that encompass prayers, fasting, hajj, zakat, these are all actions that denote servitude to a Lord. How can a person in reality be a servant to a Lord whom he doesn't even know in the first place? Because understanding the Lord is understood through usuluddin. Which is why a lot of the ulama and the maraja and the arbab of the madaris, they would say that when you strive or when you start to teach your children the religion, begin with the door of usuluddin and then teach them the furu'uddin. There is no point in a person striving hard to teach his child the details, for example, of wudu, and then wudu with jabira, and then tayammum, and all the consequences or applications of tayammum, when he doesn't understand who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. For when a child is taught the concepts of usuluddin, then his furu'uddin becomes strong automatically. In any case, when it comes to self-reformation of belief, self-reformation in terms of understanding our usuluddin, aqaid, concepts of tawheed, adala, nabuwa, imama, and ma'ad. We don't say qiyamah, we say ma'ad, because qiyamah is a small aspect. The day of judgment is one aspect of the afterlife. Ma'ad means afterlife. And it has multiple levels, starting from barzakh to the mahshar and Jannah or Jahannam. For understanding these five concepts, how well do we understand these five principles of religion? Is it sufficient for me to say, Allah is one with my tongue? Is it sufficient for me to say that Rasulullah was the final prophet of Allah with my tongue? Is this enough? Is this all that is required from us when it comes to Usuluddin? Or is there something greater? If me as a Muslim or as a Shia, I stand up and I want to declare my faith that Allah is one, that Amirul Mu'mineen is the first Imam after Rasulullah, do I have any substantial proof that I can bring forward? Can I prove Imamah from the Quran? Do I know at least a minimum of 2 verses in the Quran that prove the wilayah of Amirul Mu'mineen? Do I know or have knowledge of at least 2 verses in the Quran that speak about Adala? Outside the Quran, do I possess rational proof whereby I can prove the existence of one God? If I do not, then upon what basis should I call myself a Muslim? Upon what basis should I even worship Allah? Why should I accept the wilayah of an Imam? Why should I accept the authority of an Imam who I cannot even prove his validity or prove or establish his authority? Outside the field of tabligh, me for myself as a human individual, is there benefit in me believing in an aspect which I cannot prove? And how does a person get to this level? He gets to this level by contemplating sincerely. Whenever a person wants to seek self-reformation, whenever a person wants to move towards attaining perfection, this point or this movement or this journey of reformation, of self-building, which aspect or which factor of our life pushes us towards this movement? The factor is contemplation. Where a person sits and thinks, honestly, with full sincerity, between me and Allah, why have I been created? And the purpose for which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created me. Am I fulfilling that purpose? Hakikatan. Nobody needs to know the answer. Neither is this a topic of discussion between friends or family or even between a husband and a wife. A conversation between a single heart and Allah. I need to say it at any given point in time and be truthful to myself. The way I live my life, is this the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted me to live? Today my life revolves around what? Does my life revolve around building my image in front of other people? For example, the amount that I work, the clothes that I wear, the house that I live in, the car that I drive, everything in my life, what I own and what I work for is motivated such that my status in the eyes of my community can raise up. My service towards religion at all aspects across the board. Whoever works in any aspect, regardless of whether it is serving in a Husayniyah, regardless of whether it is sitting on a mimbar, reciting a majlis, I need to ask myself, what is my purpose of sitting here? Is it solely for shuhara, for gaining popularity? Any person who works within the realm of religion, why are they standing up for this? And does real happiness lie within the way that I live my life? I must dress in a certain way such that people can be happy with me. I must drive a certain car and break my back in my work and probably compromise a lot of things such that I can drive a certain type of car just so that people can accept me. How truthful is this life? How truthful is this life? For when a person sits and contemplates over these issues, and he begins to realize that truthfully in my life, I have fell short in my service towards Allah. When I go into the qabr, I don't have an answer to give Allah. I don't have an amal to show Allah. This is the driving force behind self-reformation and self-building and attaining the level of perfection. To be satisfied with the status quo is the first step towards regression. Even in the field of amal. Ayatollah al-Marhum Sayyid al-Burujardi, when he was on his deathbed, he was breathing his last breaths, he was found to be crying, weeping. And his family members and his students who were around him came to him and they said, Sayyid, inta ba'adi are on the door of Jannah. Ayatollah al-Udhma Sayyid Burujardi gave forward a service like a number of the Marajas, a service that whose reality cannot be understood. No matter how much a person wanted to do shukr to Maraja of these calibers, they would not be able to for the service that they have given to Islam. And said Burujardi, said, Sayyid, inta ba'di are at the door of Jannah. Marjat Taqleed has dedicated his life to Islam. Inta, why are you crying? It's just a matter of moments and you will be with Amir at the pond of Kawthar. Sayyid Burujardi began to cry. He just giving an example of one of the things that he did at a social level within the Republic of Iran. He built 400 mosques. 400 mosques. And it's somewhere when a person builds a mosque, we have in our traditions that when you build a mosque or you participate in the building of the mosque, if you give even 1 dinar, 1 dirham, 1 pound towards the structure of the mosque, so long as people pray in the mosque, a part of that ajr comes to you. So sadaqah jariyah, so long as that mosque is there, standing, and so long as people pray, you get a part of the thawab. Now tabbik or apply this to the action of Sayyid al-Burujardi, 400 mosques in Iran, fully packed with Salatul Jama'ah 5 times daily. Yet, when he was told this, Sayyid al-Burujardi's tears became more intense. His crying became more intense. And he said to his colleagues and to his family members who were there, from these 400 mosques that we have built, or I have built, and from all the amal that I have performed, how much of this has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted? When a person wants to evaluate his life, he doesn't look at how much service he has given to Islam. Rather, he looks or weeps or hopes that even one of these services are accepted by Allah. But this opens the door to ensure that a person never walks with pride in his life. He doesn't have kibr. He doesn't have arrogance. So the door towards self-building is contemplation and sincerity in the niyyah, where a person seeks to fulfill the purpose of his existence. And the first step in implementing this, as we said, is usuluddin. The person needs to know how to prove the aspects of his belief from the Quran or from any other proof outside. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Number 2. As a person walks into this market or within this field of research and studies, when it comes to usuluddin, when it comes to Islam, a person needs to ask himself, with utmost sincerity. The first step we said is, can we prove our belief? Number one. Number two, a person needs to ask himself sincerely, with utmost sincerity, the beliefs that I have about my religion, to what extent are these beliefs influenced by external factors within the environment? My belief, for example, about imamah, to what extent is my belief about the concept of imamah influenced by external political situation, for example? To what extent is my belief of imamah influenced by to what extent is my belief of imamah influenced by a secular model of leadership? The environment in which I live, the people who I interact with, to what degree do they influence my belief within a certain concept in religion? Understanding the religion as a pure concept is one thing, and to have these beliefs influenced by other factors are different. One example, outside the room or outside the field of usuluddin, the concept of hijab. A Muslimah, mu'minah, when she wears her hijab, her understanding of hijab, or the way she wears hijab, is this hijab an implementation or an understanding of hijab as per the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt? Or is this hijab that I wear influenced by what the social environment describe hijab? There is a difference between hijab of Ahlul Bayt, hijab of Sayyidah Zahra, hijab of Sayyidah Zainab, and the so-called modern hijab, where a Muslimah might think, okay, hijab to me means just covering my hair, and the rest of the clothing doesn't matter. For me, if I cover my hair, for example, and come out with full makeup, to the extent that even if you were to walk out in a winter night, the face would shine like the moon in a dark sky. This understanding of hijab is a conclusion based on which understanding? Understanding of Ahlul Bayt or understanding of the external society? To what extent is our belief system influenced to such that we may be a part of the society? Many times a person shapes his belief system such that he may fit within a certain social structure. Now this understanding, is it the same understanding as Ahlul Bayt or no? Islah, reformation of our ideological belief, concept of hijab, concept of imamah, concept of tawheed, concept of adala, concept of shafa'ah. I need to take these concepts from Ahlul Bayt. And whatever belief system I have now, I need to be able to differentiate between these two. What is pure and what is impure. This is what Sayyid al-Shuhada stood up for. لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّ. Many times our belief system is a conclusion based on premises which rely upon personal opinion. An opinion which is not derived from the Quran, neither from the Ahlul Bayt. So what happened? This opinion became a part of the faith system. mu'min is always in a state of monitoring his belief system. And this correct belief system of aqaid, usuluddin, furu'uddin is taken from who? It's taken from the Ahlul Bayt. My understanding of Tawheed. Why should I take my understanding of Tawheed solely on the words of Ibn Arabi and leave, for example, Imam Sajjad or leave Amirul Mu'mineen? Why? This is one of the biggest problems within the Muslim Ummah right now. And Amirul Mu'mineen pointed towards this. He says, how do you substitute us for others worse than us? How do you substitute perfect beings for those that are imperfect? Our understanding of Ahlul Bayt, do we understand them the way they should be? Amirul Mu'mineen, in regards to Ahlul Bayt, in Nahjul Balagha says, وَهُمْ مَوْضِئُ أَسْرَارِهِ وَهُمْ مَوْضِئُ أَسْرَارِهِ وَلَجَعَ حُكْمِهِ وَعَيْبَةُ عِلْمِهِ وَهُمْ جِبَالُ الدِّينِ. Amirul Mu'mineen says, the Ahlul Bayt are those people whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has entrusted within them His secrets. They are the shelter and the source of seeking knowledge in everything where there is a hukum of halal and haram. Yani every aspect of your life. Jibaluddin, they are mountains of religion. They are those people who will stand firm in the midst of the most terrible crisis and give you the ahkam shari. Notice what Amir says in the last part of this sermon where he's describing Ahlul Bayt, and he says, وَبِهِمْ أَقَامَ إِنْحِنَاءِ ظَهْرِهِ ظَهْرِ الدِّينِ. Yani the Damir ha goes back to the deen. وَبِهِمْ أَقَامَ إِنْحِنَاءِ ظَهْرِهِ وَأَذْهَبَ إِرْتِعَادَ فَرَائِسِهِ. Amirul Mu'mineen gives the example of Ahlul Bayt, or gives the example of religion using a body, a human body. A beautiful example that shows the peak of eloquence. Have you noticed a person who walks with a bent back? In hina means to be slanted down or to be bent down, like they say in the ruku, when you bend your back. A person's back is bent many times due to the heaviness of the load that is placed on him. And number two, because his body is not able to withstand the effect of time, yani age. Amirul Mu'mineen says that the Ahlul Bayt are those people, if the deen has been bent down because of the weight of corruption, because of the trials and the tribulations and the new masail of the ages, and these people who explain the religion are not fit enough to withstand it, what happens? The religion comes down. The religion is bent. Amirul Mu'mineen says, through the Ahlul Bayt, the deen is kept back upright. وَأَذْهَبَ إِرْتِعَادَ فَرَائِسِهِ. Fara'isi, from the word farisa. Farisa is this part of your body which is between the chest and the shoulder. This skin that is here, this part. Why did Amirul Mu'mineen use this part of the chest between the body? It is one of the most tender, one of the most sensitive parts of the body. If you see when a person is having a heart attack, which part of the body pains first? It's the part of the chest. When a person is in fear or is going through severe palpitation and there is irregular heartbeat, where do you start to feel the effects? Even when you are in a normal state of fear, what happens first? Your heartbeat accelerates. You feel it beating from here, within this part. Amirul Mu'mineen says that when the people with all their trials and tribulations and their new queries and all the new different types of fitna and fasad hit the world, and the religion is not able to withstand this pressure because they are incapable people in charge of religion, and the religion's heartbeat is accelerating like it is going to fall down, the position of the Ahlul Bayt is that they come in and they stabilize the heartbeat of Islam. And we substitute these people for other people. For a person needs to think, and a person needs to contemplate over where does he take his understanding of Islam from? And number two, how much do these values of Usuluddin matter to him? How important are these issues to me in my life? Do they mean to me more than my own life? Am I willing to sacrifice everything that I have for these principles? And when I sit down and I think about this truthfully, with utmost sincerity, I will know the reason why my 12th Imam is in Ghaiba. For reformation is a process that each and every one of us need to embark upon. It's a journey that we all need to take head on and seek inspiration from Sayyid al-Shuhada. For Sayyid al-Shuhada gave everything that he possessed for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is nothing more in Karbala that Imam Hussein could have come forward and give in the way of Allah. One of the greatest and most dear sacrifices that he presented was his 6-month-old infant. When you look at Ali al-Asghar or Abdullah al-Radhi, and you see how Sayyid al-Shuhada went towards the enemies to quench the thirst of this baby. The enemies had a number of options. Firstly, they could have been human beings, and they would have quenched the thirst of this baby. If they still didn't want to do this, they would have just refused Imam al-Hussein. They would have said, we don't want to feed this baby any water. Had they left Ali al-Asghar, the extent of his thirst was such that this baby left on its own would have died out of thirst in 3 or 4 hours. The baby would have died in itself. Yet, they decided to cause additional grief in the heart of Sayyid al-Shuhada. When Hormala shot that arrow, his intention was to rip open the heart of the mother of this infant. And to shahid, when you go to a hospital, an infant, even when an infant is going to be treated, they do not use the injection that is given to an adult. There is a special type of needle that is given to infants. Why? Because the body of an infant is feeble. And how did Harbala use a 3-pronged arrow? And when you notice a mother who has given birth to an infant, and this infant is struggling to breathe, this infant is struggling to grasp for air, notice what happens to the condition of the mother. The mother ceases to function correctly. She feels as if her blood and her flesh and her bones have been broken for every time this baby tries to grasp. So what do? They put the baby in an incubator. And when this baby is placed in an incubator and a small pipe is put through the small delicate nose of the baby, the mother's heart is about to come out of her body. For what about the heart of Rabah? The traditions tell us that when Hurmala shot the neck or shot Abdullah al-Radhi and the arrow pierced his neck, Sayyid al-Shuhada looked at this infant and he wanted to take a step forward, but the feet of Sayyid al-Shuhada would not move forward. Allah should, how, with which energy, with which courage, with which faith shall he walk towards the mother of this child? The sentiments of Rabab on one side, the sentiment of this father to see his infant in this way. Perhaps it was that Imam al-Hussein himself would die at this instant when he saw his baby in this case. And perhaps for this reason, Jibreel cries out from the sky, Da'hu, leave him, Ya Hussein, we have a nurse for him in Jannah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Wa la'natullah ala qawmi adh-dhalimin. Allahumma inna nas'aluka bi'ismika al-a'zam, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Rabbal Jalal, Ya Allah, we ask you, O Creator of everything within existence, O Lord of Muhammad, Fatima, Ali, Hassan and Hussein, we ask you by the sake of these tears that flow down our cheeks out of the grief of Ahlul Bayt, Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of our 12th Imam. Ya Allah, mu'mineen have come here on this cold night in this terrible weather. Do not let them reach their homes except that you have accepted their hajat. Ya Allah, protect the mu'mineen and protect their families from every su and bala. Ya Allah, any one of our family members or friends who are not in the best of health, you grant them shafa'ah. Every one of our family members or friends who have passed away, make their graves into a Jannah, a garden from the gardens of Jannah. Wa akhiru da'wana, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.